Nice Radio's Callaloo presents Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative, and yes, certainly controversial socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio, first aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m. with repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. Remember that you can always catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info. You can always check us out on Facebook and YouTube. I am, of course, Keith Joseph. I want to begin this week's edition by giving a very special shout out, recognition, acknowledgement, praise to one Baylis Frederick, lawyer by profession, originally from Tobago. Baylis Frederick eventually made his home in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He's a lawyer. And during this past week, he celebrated his 100th birthday. Yep, 100 years. Still very cogent. Still very committed to his Christian faith. Most of all, still committed to his family. To the family from Trinidad, from Tobago, from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, all came together. Those who were living in the diaspora as well came together to celebrate the life of Baylis Frederick, 100 years old. He celebrated his birthday during the past week. They had a special get-together of all the family members, friends, acquaintances at the family home. And then on Friday, they held a dinner in his honor at a family property in Penniston. But it was amazing to see the expressions of love from family members. Very diverse family, admittedly, but filled with love and joy. And colleagues in the legal profession who may have admired him and who still do. But among the things said during the presentation by individuals, friends, well-wishers, and family members, on which all Vincentians should know, is that at 100, Baylis Frederick has all of his faculties about him. His voice remains strong, his brain remains sharp, and he has lost none of his vigor in respect of the way in which he expresses his opinion about matters impacting society. The other critical thing that everyone mentioned was his fearless nature. He was convinced that he knew the law and he could interpret it at will, and that he was able to defend himself and defend others. And he sought an indefatigable fight for justice. So his conflict with former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, now deceased, Eric Williams, Dr. Eric Williams, was a critical point in his career. But Baylis, throughout his life, maintained that attitude that he would be on the side of those who he saw as oppressed. And he fought for them. He was not concerned about being jailed because he's been there a few times. He was not afraid to call out judges, magistrates, or whomsoever, just as he was not afraid to call out prime ministers and political leaders. So the measure of the man is his commitment to fair play. And so I'm sure that many will eventually chronicle his life and times. 100, he says he wants to live a lot longer. But it was impressive to see the family, friends, colleagues, acquaintances come together to celebrate a man who has distinguished himself by his commitment to God, his commitment to his family, his commitment to the law. Not many people live that long, but Baylis is living and enjoying his 100th birthday. And his vigor, his thirst for justice, and his engagement in politics is today as remarkable as it has ever been. So his birthday having been Wednesday of this past week, today we take the opportunity here just another day to give God thanks for Baylis and to thank Baylis for the impact that he has had on this Caribbean of ours. We thank you, and we hope that the example that you would have set in many aspects of your life and in the practice of law and your commitment to political activism will be a legacy that many others would wish to take on board in their own lives. So congratulations, Baylis. And we hope that you continue to be strong and you continue to pass on that vitality and that fearlessness, be able to impart it on others in Vincentian society and among Vincentians at home and abroad. Congratulations, dear friend. But one of the most recent announcements in the political realm is the election by the representatives of the North Leeward constituency of the New Democratic Party. Election of Kishore Shaloo, who many of you know as a cricketer, a cricket administrator, some business days, and now the president for some time of Cricket West Indies. And under his watch, Cricket West Indies has been operating with a mandate to work along with the development of the sport of cricket in the United States of America. And you know that cricket has been included in the Olympics planned for Los Angeles and the USA in 2028. So Shallow has thrown his hat in the ring as a candidate for the New Democratic Party. And he's doing so in the North Leeward constituency. But as expected, the leader of government is already throwing hints about what he will or will not do and what have you. But let's analyze what has happened. Over the years, many Vincentians have been calling for change. And many have held the view that while Gonzalez has been talking about young people and engaging young people, there has been more talk than action. And so it's not surprising that when you return to the manifesto of Labour MNU Unity in 1994, the section on youth does not quite measure up to a full page. The section on youth. And it says young persons possess enormous potential for the development of themselves and society. Government's policy must be directed at enhancing their possibilities and eliminating their involvement in anti-social activities and increasing the economic and social opportunities. That's what they said about youth. That's what they say. And then they have exactly 4 activities. 5. Implement an economic policy directed at reducing unemployment among young people. Since 1994, they're talking about that, right? Who are the most unemployed in the country? What proportion of the unemployed in this country is made up of youth? Establish a youth foundation which will channel funds to youth programs and young entrepreneurs. A youth foundation. Establish a national youth service for young persons 16 and over, offering work experience and training internships. We expect that he would probably say, the government would probably say, oh, the YES program and SET program have something to do with that. Support fully the National Youth Council. Well, that dead. That died a natural death. Establish a housing policy with a specific plank directed at assisting young home buyers. Well, if you see that someplace, you're lucky. So in 1994, youth did not take up even a page, a full page, in the manifesto of MNU Labour. But during the years, that has remained essentially the same. And if you go through the manifestos of 98 and 2001 and even thereafter, youths have been a sort of political mamagism. The commentaries that have been made by the ruling regime on youth and the advancement of youth has come across as more related to utilizing youth, to hold them up as showpieces when it suits the pride and purposes of the government. Little attention is paid to the fact that we have a relatively high percentage of recidivism. Repeat offenders finding their way back in the nation's courts and in the nation's prisons. Delinquency remains an issue. And we have seen many of our nation's youths carted off in boxes, having been engaged in violence of some sort, leading to their death. What attention really has been and is being paid to youth? You may recall over time, the Prime Minister holding up young people, or relatively young people, and suggesting that his is the party of change. His is the party of youth. And you had senators, young people as senators, male and female, some of whom there's no mention about these days. And some of them are still relatively young. But each time a young person was made a senator, glowing tributes were paid to them. And they were held up as examples of how the Unity Labour Party and the government of the Unity Labour Party does business. The future, they said, they're looking towards. The future. But when you look at what has happened within the party, the youth are not given the chance. There were many who thought that when they saw a billboard put up with the Prime Minister almost larger than life in the middle, and Camilo on one side and the Saboto on the other side, that somehow that was supposed to be related to the leadership of this country and the leadership of the party. And so there was a time when there was a sense of euphoria within the Unity Labour Party that youth were finally going to be given an opportunity to lead. And so they thought that there was going to be some sort of leadership contest that would see Gonzales, the elder, Ralph, retreat, and the younger generation of his son Camilo and Saboto coming forward. But therein lies a problem. Because as with so many things with governance under the Unity Labour Party, Papa appears to be the key decision maker. And so Papa may well have been of a view that his son could be his successor. That there were others who were asking the question, where was his son when Saboto was back at home helping to build the party and to help the party win government and retain government? Where was his son? And so there have been tensions among the electorate who are holding the view that you just come relative to Saboto. And so people expected that by this time, Papa would still have been around, still influencing party decision making, but that leadership, which one was given the impression when the younger politicians were brought on board, that there was some sort of training taking place. There was some sort of grooming taking place so that they can in fact step into the breach as he withdrew from mainstream politics. And people within the party were expectant that that would have happened. And they were looking forward to being able to make the decision as a party in a genuinely democratic manner to choose the successor to Ravgurdwal. And so many thought the battle was on and people were aligning themselves. And suddenly, in the lead up to the last general elections, news broke that Papa wasn't going anywhere. And Papa was the only candidate for leadership of the party, which means Papa would retain leadership of the country once the party won the elections. And what led to that? Some may suggest that a number of factors would have led to that. One was that there was a feeling within the party that democracy should prevail and that the party was not prepared and that the country was not prepared for a political dynasty within one family. Jomo Thomas, in his commentaries, expressed the view that yes, it seems as though a dynasty was at least being contemplated. But as the news moved around the country of a potential political dynasty, the views of the country impacted the views of the party. And so it was felt that the head-to-head matchup between Saboto and Kabilo would have yielded the leadership title to Saboto. That was the view. And there are those who would argue that it is that view that occupied the leadership of the Unity Labour Party. And so, we heard the leader saying he's not going anywhere. Not yet. And since then, he has indicated he has so much more to do. He's not done yet, which is a signal to those young ones behind him. He ain't going anywhere anytime soon. And consequently, the young people who would have been promoted as the future of the party and as the future of governance in this country are getting older by the day. Indeed, some may consider them no longer young. So that by the time Gonzales the Elder demits office, they may well be old and looking for young people to come into the party all over again. Importantly, dear friends, the old people always remind us is not just what you say, but what you do. So you may recall that each time the Prime Minister appoints someone as a senator, he highlights their youthfulness. And he has shown a level of fairness with regard to male appointments and female appointments. So it suggests a sense of fairness. But if you go through the history of the Unity Labour Party government since 2001, you would recognize that the youths have not been given a fair shot at leadership. The youths who have been brought into the party as senators over the years, and some have gone on to be ministers, have not been given a fair shot at leadership. And if you follow the history, you will recognize that there seems to be a kind of backward, politically backward type of fear of handing the reins of power, greater leadership and responsibility to the younger people within the party. There's no evidence of any training mechanism within the Unity Labour Party for the young people brought on board. None. And some may well suggest that the insistence of Luke Brown that he should have a seat at the table of decision making, that he should continue to contest elections for and on behalf of the party and the people in the constituency that he wants to represent, is an aberration in the system of the Unity Labour Party. There is little evidence that any other member of the party, any other young member of the party, has been so aggressive and so insistent of a right to show and continue to show his commitment to the party and his commitment to the electoral process to give him a fair shot at becoming the representative for the East Kingstown constituency over and over again. That is an aberration in the system. officially it comes across as though he's challenging the existing system that is in place within the Unity Labour Party. Because many felt that he's been marginalized. And he is insistent he is not being marginalized. He is prepared to challenge anyone that the party may wish to bring on board for the right to be the representative in East Kingston. So here is a young man who believes that he has a right to utilize the democratic process that the party promotes, to work diligently to prove himself worthy to be the party's representative as a young person in that constituency and hopefully get back into parliament. That is a challenge to the existing order of the way the ULP does business. He is not moving aside. He continues to try to build upon his base and to strengthen that. That is an aberration to the party's mode of operation. Saboto continues to work in the field to build upon his base so that he remains a fighting force within the party, ready and willing, should the party so decide at any point in time, to be the candidate for leadership of the party. And he has recognized that his popularity is higher than that of the Prime Minister's son, Camilo. And is not seen as possessing the baggage that Camilo has. And so it was not surprising that a party convention for members of Saboto's constituency and party group to be shouting Saboto, Saboto, Saboto at a convention, even when the Prime Minister and leader of the party is walking into that convention. And while that should normally stand as an example of the application of the democratic process within the party, one is not so sure that in reality, in practical terms, that Saboto will ever really, as long as Ralph Gonsalves is the head of the party, that Saboto may very well understand that it's going to be extremely difficult to get the support of Ralph Gonsalves for leadership of that party. Listen to the speeches of the Prime Minister since that Saboto appeal at the convention some years ago. How often has he mentioned Saboto's name in any public official capacity with regard to nation building? How often have you heard him since that Saboto chant promoted Saboto in the way he was doing years ago when he talked about Saboto on one side and Camilo on the other side as rising leaders within the party? How often in the last few years have you heard him promote Saboto and his work in the Ministry of Agriculture and wherever else in government and in the party? Where have you heard it, and how often have you been hearing it? It is not what you say, is what you do and how you do it. So you, dear listener, ask yourselves whether or not, since that Saboto chant, that the Prime Minister himself and leader of the party may have taken a stance, adopted a stance, where he does not appear to be giving Saboto the kudos that one would have expected for a young member within the party. Remember, one of the issues that negatively impacted Camilo in the last general elections was the Yogi Farrell issue. And that remains an issue, if only because he listened to the advice of some who said to maintain silence. And there are others who are saying, do like some other politicians and admit your engagement. But to stay silent and have people talking about you were advised to maintain a quote-unquote dignified silence, the people may not be so sure that you can maintain a dignified silence over a mode of conduct that many may not have seen as being dignified. Some would have said, come open and take your blows. Take it like a man. Because it's man you were purporting to be. That baggage hurt him. But what may also have hurt him was a belief within the electorate in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that they do not want a political dynasty. This is no family hand-me-down business. That is not how the system is designed to work as far as some people are concerned. And so one gets the impression that in spite of all of the number of portfolios handed to Camilo, in spite of his perceived ranking in the system relative to the allocation of portfolios, that he's not as well liked within the party as Saboto. So the Prime Minister and his government appointed since 2001 two deputy prime ministers. The first one was Louis Straker. And the second one, Montgomery Daniel. And by all objective analyses, if you were ranking people within the system, neither of them, Straker and Daniel, would have been given any major points. Whether it is in terms of political savvy, or leadership, charisma, and perceived work ethic. Popularity, neither of them would have featured prominently if you rank the ULP ministers. But yet they were appointed in their respective times Deputy Prime Minister. And if we understand the role of Deputy Prime Minister to mean acting for and on behalf of the Prime Minister when he is absent, or being the primary support to the Prime Minister when he is present. You know, Michael Manley used to have PJ Patterson with him all the time. Whenever he talking anything, he used to say, "Isn't that right, PJ?" In public, wherever he went, "Isn't that right, PJ?" And just PJ and I were talking, and PJ and I were just talking about that, and PJ and I was. But you knew that PJ was the second in command. You knew he was the second in command. But you never thought that Louis Straker was ever second in command, however much he was declared the deputy prime minister. You never once thought that he was the second in command within the party, or within government rather. Never thought that. And equally, nobody takes Montgomery Daniels seriously enough to see him as second in command to Gonzales, the elder, in the governance structure of this country. Nobody does that. So why is it, if at one stage the Prime Minister reached a point of trying to suggest to the nation that he was preparing to demit, relinquish leadership, and that the two main contenders were two young politicians, Camilo and Saboto. But yet neither of them is among the chosen to be seen as effectively appointed second in command, deputy prime minister. And there are those who may analyze this and says, but it is his fear that they may take the position seriously enough to make decisions for and on behalf of the government in the absence of the prime minister. There are those who felt that the likes of Jerry Scott and John Horn may have suffered under James Mitchell, because on the occasion that he had asked them to serve in an acting capacity as prime minister in his absence, they may have been bold enough to say things or do things that they thought was in the best interests of the nation at the time. And so you could check on one hand the number of times either of them was asked to serve as acting prime minister. We tend to forget that, because in our anxiety to bolster the image of James Mitchell, we chose not to discuss that. But discussing those issues and those aspects of politics is important, because we admit that no one is perfect. And we admit also that we have witnessed the same prime ministerial governance that so many of our scholars have criticized over the years for being characteristic of the Anglophone Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean. We are afraid to discuss things because we like this one and we like that one. Being able to discuss the shortcomings of a leader is part and parcel of the democratic process, is part and parcel of the growth and development process within an organization. And so we talk about it on this program. And we can say within the Unity Labour Party government, that is what we have seen. You cannot be serious about your own approach to governance if you are appointing second in command people who do not have the kind of support you would expect from your supporters and from the country because they don't have any genuine political presence. Neither of them commanded the attention of the electorate. And one can question whether or not, even within the government, they were able at any point to command the respect of their peers sitting around the table in cabinet. That is the issue. There's nobody within the structure of the Unity Labour Party who denied or who can deny the role that Julian Francis played in keeping the party together and in marshalling the party's forces whenever there are elections. Nobody could deny that. He didn't have to have a designation in Parliament. It's why Julian was able to say very early with the bridge over troubled water, I did it. And to explain why he did it, you may disagree with him, but he commanded the position as minister and said, I did it because I thought that it would take too long if I went through all this red tape. Admittedly, he also perhaps thought that it would take too long to try to change the mode of operation of the tenders board. But he took a position based on his politics, based on his principles. And his guiding principle was get the job done as quickly as possible. So everybody knew and still know that within the party, the power that Julian Francis has. Outside of Gonzalez, ain't nobody else in the party that displays that kind of leadership and power. Really. Nobody else other than Julian. But when you give the nation Straker on one side as your deputy, and now Daniel on the other side, neither of whom appear to command leadership respect within the party, other than trying to keep a low profile altogether so that the nation doesn't seem to think that there's any internal rancor. You didn't appoint any young person. You didn't appoint any rising star to that position, second in command. But at the same time, when you're speaking to youths and students, you're suggesting that your whole approach to the so-called education revolution is to produce successive generations of youths in this country prepared, armed with the tools to rise to leadership in the country. They could rise to leadership wherever else they want. They ain't rising within the party. So your contention now is the fact that the opposition, whatever else you may think of them, have gone on board and said, hey, we are bringing younger people into the system. And now there's somebody who already has his own international profile built on his work, not on anybody else's. He didn't climb on anybody else's back to get there. He didn't have a fairy godmother or godfather. He worked to get to the leadership of Cricket West Indies. Just as he worked diligently to get his doctorate and to establish his own account business. His independence and his own commitment to the development of this country has allowed him to chart a path as a young man to put his hat in the ring. But we know the politics of this country. And we can expect to hear all sorts of innuendos by those who accuse others of political innuendos. But one has to be mindful that you cannot on the one hand be talking about the importance of young people taking and holding on to the mantle of leadership and showing commitment to the development of their country. You can't be saying that on the one hand on the political platforms and in the United Nations and elsewhere, and at the same time be decrying young people from this country for getting into politics in support of another party. That is their fundamental right. And it is the electorate to decide their viability politically for leadership in this country. Not for you as leader of the government to determine. We cannot on the one hand say that we are educating youth for the future and the future of our society, and at the same time appear to be decrying the decisions they make because they may not have opted for your side of the political spectrum. That is a choice for the electorate. In the rough and tumble of politics, as some people like to say, these things happen. And everybody strives. That is why within your own organization, Luke Brung is saying, I have a right to be here. And I will fight tooth and nail to be here. Because I want to be sitting at the table. That is his right. That is his right. It is his desire to want to be a representative of the people in Parliament. He may not win, but he has that right, and he's exercising that right. And he's throwing down the gauntlet for whatever the party or anybody else may throw up as a challenge for him to be the party's representative in the area. And so we have to wait and see. The party will make the choice, and he will be asked to accept whatever the party decides in the collective best interest of the party. But that is the nature of politics. Understand that political parties are organizations that have been created with the objective of forming the government in a country. That's what political parties are about. Nothing else. You don't form a political party to oppose. If you've lost the election and you're in opposition, you oppose. But your mandate is to strive to attain governance. And so people have already started positioning shallow as to whether or not he's capable of leading the party, whatever and whatever. That is not necessarily an issue that the party should occupy itself with at this time. The major focus is to win the elections. That's your major focus. Don't be sidetracked at this juncture. A political party succeeds because it's a team. It's a team effort. The democratic process yields who becomes leader of that organization. And when that becomes an issue, the party will deal with it. They all do. But we are also aware that in political parties, if you're not careful, they all become Imanist institutions with one person dictating everything. The people know that Shallow's name has been on the ground for some time. Other names have been on the ground for some time. And names of young persons. The challenge for the Unity Labour Party, the ruling party in the country at present, is that people may be looking at the party and saying, what have you done for me lately in respect of giving youth an appropriate seat at the table? Because they have witnessed youths being brought in, but it looks as though they're sitting some distance from the table. The decision-making process is still dominated by one individual. So, Shallow's name and Shallow's reputation in the realm of his own academic growth, striving for academic excellence, his leadership in terms of sport, has combined to create an individual that is immediately upon the announcement perceived to be a major challenge for the ruling regime. And that he will immediately become a target. Within the New Democratic Party, his impact will also be immediately felt. And one will hope that the party is sensible enough to allow for a contending of ideas to facilitate, first and foremost, the unity of the party, enhance the dynamism of the party and its appeal to the electorate, so that it can achieve its mandate of wanting to form the next government. That's your primary purpose at this stage. The Unity Labour Party still has to determine within its own structure whether or not it can remain unified, and how long before the party determines that its existing structure and mode of operation may well be out of date. Because the luster that once characterized the charisma surrounding Ralph Gonsalves no longer exists. And the regurgitation of some political ideas does not help his cause. The whole idea of sitting there and of playing or appearing to play games in terms of succession within the organization, in terms of the farming out of responsibilities and accrediting those persons doing the work and allowing them the opportunity to be stars that shine before the Vincentian electorate. That remains an important part of Vincentian life. And so one has to understand that in each of the manifestos of the Unity Labour Party since 1994, when they were MNU Labour, or Labour MNU. Since that time, youth have really gotten little more than lip service. Little more than lip service. And so once people sit down and look at the realities, they have an understanding of the absence of change, and an understanding that leadership within the Unity Labour Party has gone into decline. if not reverse mode. But the hold of Gonzales the Elder on the party mechanism, etc., may well also be loosening. You see, the dynamics of the politics and what impacts decision making in the country has been undergoing change for some time. So people are concerned about the way in which information about what is being done in the Grenadines as part of the rehabilitation must extend beyond what we read in the Unity Labour Party columns in the newspapers. It must extend beyond what some may perceive to be a sort of prejudicial type of dismission of distribution of news. That there's not enough communication coming from the people who are supposed to be the beneficiaries of what is being done. You keep telling us how wonderful your work has been and is intended to be, but you're not at the same time bringing exemplars to showcase their understanding and their appreciation for what you're doing. So we may very well end up with an even more divided society as a result of the inadequacy of the collaboration, cooperation, and communication about what is being done in the Southern Grenadines. People in the Southern Grenadines have an understanding of the politics of the day. The situation with regard to Taiwan, if we're not careful, we may end up calling ourselves St. Vincent and the Grenadines of Taiwan. Because there's hardly a week that passes by where we don't have to thank Taiwan for something. Hardly ever a week passes by. It is not that we are ungrateful for their assistance, but the leader of this country has told the nation, if you move them from government and replace them with another government that may want to change their international relations policies and practices, and they have to pay back Taiwan all the money that we borrow over the years and all the money that we will continue to borrow. But when as a government you come and you explain to us that you have chosen to turn your backs on the offer of an institution like the World Bank with regard to the construction of our new hospital, and have opted instead to borrow the money from Taiwan, and then to turn around to bypass the tenders board and award a contract to a Taiwanese company, that raises a flag. It raises a flag. So the issue of transparency and accountability, those flags are immediately raised. We've said before, the tenders board exists to protect public officials from themselves. But when you take what has happened in this recent case and you hold us against the backdrop that since King Hatchet was a hammer, the Unity Labour Party has been mouthing the importance of integrity legislation, but has done absolutely nothing to bring it to the forefront of national politics in the 23 years of its existence as leading the country, then you have to ask questions. And you end up with more questions than there are answers. When you take into consideration that regardless of what excuses are given, the Girls High School, one of the nation's largest secondary institutions, remain languishing in the heat of the tarmac for 4 years. And the school doesn't appear to be being readied for occupation anytime soon at its original location in Kingstown. Then you have an understanding of how sad a state we are in. When the Thomas Saunders Secondary School, which was supposed to be the first one to go out on the tarmac and be repaired, because that was the old Richmond Hill Elementary School, they ended up going out after the first year when grammar school came back in. And the work has not started. Physical repairs have not started on that institution as yet. And you pass it every day. And you see the absence of any work on that institution, which suggests that the Thomas Saunders Secondary School ain't moving from the tarmac anytime soon. And so, plans that may have been laid for other institutions to occupy the plywood schools on the tarmac while their original institutions are being repaired, those are up in the air. Those remain up in the air. What does that tell us in terms of our approach to governance? So you are telling us that we will stay so tied to Taiwan that every week Taiwan is in the news as much as the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And suggesting that if another party comes in and tries to move or change their relationship with countries, do all the time. Different governments have different policies and different foreign practices. So why should we be any different? Because you say so. And you can boast that under your administration, we have become almost a surrogate, as Ivan O'Neill used to say, a surrogate of Taiwan. That part of your legacy is that we should remain forever in that type of relationship. That is for the next government to decide. You don't try to use that as a promotional tool in the electoral process. So vote for us, because we will stay with Taiwan and Taiwan will forever allow us to be their surrogate. That's the game plan. It ain't the game plan. So we are saying to you today that the Unity Labour Party has a leadership crisis. It has had a leadership crisis for some time. But one of the issues that we have to deal with is the refusal of the party to address that leadership crisis. And unless it does so, it will suffer the consequences. That's how politics work. So if you put all your eggs in one basket named Ralph Gonsalves, at some point, unless you facilitate the enhancement of the rest of the membership, unless you facilitate a democratic process, genuine democratic process that allows for the youth that you so often talk about to have an opportunity and a pathway, a career pathway within the party and within the government, then you are doomed to eventually fail. It doesn't have to be that way. So the inclusion by some younger people within the New Democratic Party has now thrown the cat among the pigeons in terms of the elections in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which is going to be proven to be the party of change. The manifesto of Labour MNU Unity in 1994 was entitled Make the Change. Make the change. In 1998, it became Ready for the Change. Ready for the Change. In 2001, it became ULP for all are we. Labour now. Labour now. What will it be in 2025? What will it be? Charisma has worn thin. Membership is aging. Leadership is aging. Ideas are getting out of date. The same old mumbo-jumbo politics of the 1990s may no longer be relevant, but more importantly, may no longer be viable with the changing nature of the Vincentian electorate. That is a challenge. We're becoming a society that is increasingly secularized. The traditional religious values that have held sway for decades are loosening. Examples, good examples, are in short supply. Morality continues to be at risk. What does the future hold for St. Vincent and the Grenadines? And who are the ones to step forward with programs, proposals, projects, and people who are committed to effective change that will adequately address today and tomorrow's global society. It is not how well we speak at the United Nations or any other forum. It is not how well we try to articulate at home why you should be the leader of the country. What is important is to showcase a blend of youth and experience. A blend of people who get where they get by merit. It depends on the extent to which we can harmonize the resources of this country to pull ourselves together as a nation unified. Not characterized by what color shirt or t-shirt we wear, but by what we bring to the table in terms of our academic foundation, in terms of our commitment to hard work, in terms of a clear understanding of where this country is in the global scheme of things, in the regional scheme of things, and where the country can be taken forward as a collective so that everybody in Vincenzo society believe that they have a fighting chance to be part of the broader national development process. The man said, we have a country to build. And if we don't do it, who will? It's all of us that have to do it. So all of us have a stake. And all of us must continue to work diligently and let our voices be heard, as Baylis has done over the years. We may not always agree with the fundamentals, but we may be able to still work with each other, understanding that differences often help to arrive at a better end product. That end product is a unified St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Enough said. You've been listening to another edition of Nice Radio's Callaloo presentation, Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an exciting, innovative, albeit decidedly provocative, and yes, certainly controversial, socio-political and analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard on Nice Radio on Saturdays at 6 p.m., repeated on Sundays at 9 p.m. But you could also find us on Facebook and YouTube. I am, of course, Keith Joseph. Happy birthday celebrations. Happy 100 birthday celebrations to Baylis Frederick. Enjoy it, my brother. Enjoy it. May your family continue to be around you as you enjoy 100 and counting. God bless you.